What made you think that? I mean, is it just you look at it and think, God, this is hard?
We come up with one main solution. So now it's for them to use SQL. They are using SQL for about 90% of the data, but some people are also using Python.
And that's one of the things we've seen. GCS have got the innovation hub where we're training people on new skill sets, but you can't keep changing it, can you? You have to have a basis of it. You have to have a platform that you kind of work from. I guess a lot of median companies sit there and think, I just won't do it. I'll move slowly with the tide of technology, right?
Yeah, it's been working this way before, and this is how it works, and it always worked. So we just continue with this.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the GCS Connect Leader Series. We've got Vito Minheere today in Holland. He is a consultant that works with Viper, and his key kind of area is platform engineering, which is basically building the structure that major companies run their applications on. So we talk a lot about how he keeps at the cutting edge of technology with regards to building his network, going to exhibitions and really researching and learning about this, which is important for his role, but also helps him to be a leading edge technologist. And I think that's something that I really get from Vito. He talks a lot and thinks a lot about how to stay ahead of the game in technology, which is what I think everyone needs to be as a leader in today's industry and business. So without further ado, here's Vito. Hi, Vito. How are you?
I'm good, David. And you?
Very well, very well, very well. Yes, yes. Great to speak to you. So Vito's joining us. He's a lead consultant at Viper, very much focusing around the platform space in terms of cloud technology. He's actually working with us at the moment as a major organization, which we'll talk about a little bit more in regards to migration. But from talking to him, from working with him over the last few years, we thought to be a great person to kind of join, just due to the fact that he's really got some great insights into the way that technology is moving, the way that the cloud in particular is moving, and someone that we felt could give us a real kind of understanding of what's happening here. So welcome, Vito. I always start, Vito, just with a little bit of background about yourself, a bit of understanding. So yeah, give us a quick tour through your career history thus far of the last 8 years.
Well, thanks for the great introduction, David. My career, it started very, very long ago. Quite randomly, I signed up for a network administrator education. Oh, that must be like 14 years ago now. I did that for 4 years, then figured out, oh, just administrating a network isn't what I want to do. I want to grow a bit more into IT, and then I did an internship, and the manager there that was managing my internship that said, "Well, why did you go into software engineering, right? If you want to do more with computers, that will be a good market." So I was like, "Okay, sounds fine." I picked that. Did a bunch of things there. About databases, started out in Java, and then subsequently, I guess I selected a project to do on Python, and then learned about data science. So I just randomly rolled into most of these things, and then I started learning more about it. I did my graduation internship in data science in Valencia in Spain. So that was a really good way for me to see if going abroad would be something I was interested in. Um, and yeah, that data science project got my foot in the door for other interesting projects. And my first job I got at a company that was near Utrecht. They were using smart meters for the energy meters, and they were running on Google Cloud. So that was an introduction to cloud. And yeah, I just continued on from there. I switched to some consultancies on Google Cloud, then focused on Python for a bit. Also started on Azure because that's a major player in the Netherlands for government and other companies.
And do you feel, obviously some of the stuff you kind of mentioned there, with regards to start as a network administrator, moving into cloud, moving to software engineering, Python, moving into data, et cetera, et cetera. in some ways that sounds like, as a recruiter, that sounds like you've really followed through with some of the hot technologies, as it were, through your career. Do you feel that you've done that on purpose? You know, is that something you've done in a conscious way to follow certain things that are happening, or whether it's, you know, you've followed the projects that are open?
Well, it's a bit of both, right? So you can see what projects are open, what the market is asking for. And the usual thing I ran into at consultancies is that they say, hey, we have this project with JavaScript. So you need to learn JavaScript and then you can start on this project. But then you're already behind. So you need to kind of guess what the market is going to do, follow interesting technologies. And then when I did the data science internship, then they said, oh, data science is the hottest job at the moment. So that was really good to get into. And then a couple of years later, the whole machine learning thing kicked off, and then data science was becoming a bit less. There were less jobs for it. And I wasn't smart enough to do the actual data science part, but I did learn about the data engineering part. And then the market said, hey, we need more data engineers. So I could just jump on that bandwagon. And right now I'm just trying to follow multiple things at the same time. So I'm trying to follow cloud and what's possible there. I go to meetups to keep up to date with all the changes. And I also try some more cloud agnostic, like Kubernetes, so that I can, if I were to switch clouds or environments, I can still use those skills.
It sounds to me like you're someone, you know, well, we said it, you know, you're quite kind of conscious in what you follow and how you look at it. And obviously, I guess some of the people that are listening to this, maybe who aren't in technology or are quite stuck within one particular mind frame. What are the challenges, therefore, of saying, right, I need to learn JavaScript? And, you know, how do you go about it and do it in a way that you can use those skills quickly?
Yeah, so I started out in Python, so I built most of it on the back of Python. And you could do data science with it, data engineering with it, so you could do all these different jobs with just one language. But I mainly try to use what I know and then connect it to what I'm learning right now. So I did a lot of Google Clouds, and then when I wanted to switch to Azure, I just said, okay, what is the same on Google Clouds? Thank God the naming was about the same. Like Cloud SQL is SQL on both ends, so that worked out. Um, but I did do a lot of user and identity access, and then I could remember what I did in projects on Google Cloud. I remember what issues I ran into, and then I could figure out, okay, what's the solution for that on Azure? How does Google Cloud do it? What's the difference? What can I still use in the same way? And relating that will help a lot. In the beginning, it will be quite hard because then the terms and names will be changing all over the place. But yeah, once you do it a couple of times, it's easier to map out what you know and how you can use that.
The other thing you said there was, I mean, obviously don't take it the wrong way, Vito, because you're obviously much more knowledgeable about these things, but you said, I'm not clever enough to do data science. So again, you don't generally hear people who are kind of discounting themselves from something, particularly someone who can do Python, can do cloud, you know. So I guess that's something where you need to be quite self-aware of yourself. I mean, what made you think that? I mean, is it just you look at it and think, God, this is hard? Or
Uh, no, I think I started after the first Google Cloud job. I went to a Google Cloud consultancy, and then they had data scientists there. So I said, "Oh, I did that." They introduced me. Said, "Oh, you did some data science." So they started off talking about math and all that. I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't do that. I just picked the data, transformed it a bit, ran it through models, scored it, and then did that whole pipeline, which is actually, I guess, more data engineering in the end." So then I really ran into the issue that I was way too deep for that. So I just tried to stick with what I knew and build that out instead of. I think the thing I followed was more, okay, I've got all these years of development already behind me. I can now focus a couple of years to learn all the math required to do this, or I could just stick with what I know and continue to build on that and have someone else do the math parts, that people that are interested in doing that. And then combine our knowledge and come to a solution.
I liken it a little bit to, I don't know if have you ever been skiing, Vito?
I went
Oh,
snowboarding
right.
a
Well,
couple
yeah.
of
So
times.
it's
Never tried
I can
skiing.
continue with my analogy, but I'm a skier, right? So when you're skiing, you could spend your skiing holiday learning how to snowboard, couldn't you? Or you could spend your snowboarding holiday
Yes, you
learning
could.
how to ski, but then that would waste your holiday. I mean, you wouldn't be practicing your skiing. So I guess if you lived in the mountains, you could do both. But for me, I always
Yes,
think, well,
then
no,
you're.
I'm good at skiing. Let's keep skiing. I can't be bothered to learn how to snowboard.
And to continue your analogy on snowboarding, I went to a snowboarding trip a couple of years ago with a company, and I could skateboard. I skateboarded in my youth. Um, so I thought, okay, that will map out quite good to snowboarding, and it did. But the only issue was I could only turn, I guess, with my back to the mountain, but not the other way. And then instead of learning it the right way, I just did both turns with my back to the mountain. So I looked like a falling leaf coming down the mountain.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's good.
I managed, but yeah,
And I guess,
it really I didn't get too good at it.
yeah, and I
So I
guess
did it
kind of
a couple of
to
times.
kind of bring that back on the technology. I mean, you know, what you're saying there is learning these skills, kind of keeping yourself current as a contractor, which is basically what you are, is really about, like you said about using the Google Cloud to understand the Azure. It's really about understanding the kind of the universal technology, and then I guess it's having the confidence really to say to put you in that position where you know you're going for these jobs, you're taking on these technologies and doing these projects. For me, not being technical, that would be tough, but like you must have to have confidence to do it, right? To kind of push yourself out there and and put
Yes,
yourself in
yes, and
outside your comfort zone.
yes, I did it. I started doing that a couple of years back. So I went to a lot of Python conferences, and then I usually had the thing where I went to some place and I knew all these things a bit already. Like if they go into a whole presentation, you will learn some new things. But the base of it I already knew, so it wasn't that much learning that I did there. It was more, oh, this really deep dive part that maybe I would use once. And now I try to go to a lot more broad conferences. So there are these broad software ones where you have any topic you want, not just one specific language. And last year I really looked into the uh, no no code tools. So I think I used them or tried using them a couple of years back, then I didn't like it. And now there were a lot of presentations on no code and low code tools. So I thought, oh, I'll give it another try. And then the people presenting were really enthusiastic and they got me going. So I'm now also looking at that again. So you can just spark a subject for a couple of years and then maybe later on it becomes really interesting.
And I think, obviously that element of, going to the exhibitions, going to the meetups, going to areas where you're actually kind of, consciously learning about this. How do you find out about those particular kind of areas? I mean, how do you do that? Do you put yourself out there, your mailing lists? Are you
Yes, it was usually just using Meetup, the website, but feels like it's getting harder to use, I feel almost, because can't really find anything in my area. It's usually in Amsterdam and the Randstad. LinkedIn is also a good one to just connect to a lot of people. When I worked at consultancies, they also try to host their own, uh, yeah, host their own things. But they also say, oh, we don't want to go to these other competitor, their events because they are our competitor. Well, I thought, oh, that's interesting because they talk about the same thing. Let's join it or let's go
good?
there and just talk to these people because we're doing the same technical stuff. And once you start talking about technical things instead of company things, then yeah, you will get a good conversation going. And then it's also just following along with that. So if someone hosts an event, they usually know people that also host events. And that's a good way to connect to that.
And what are the key things when you're going to these exhibitions, you're trying to kind of put in there? What are the key things that you think are important to really find out, or the right types of networks to build and the people to speak to?
So I had a fun one. I think in January I went to local events on Microsoft. It's called BitDash, and it was in Veenendaal, so not in the Randstad, so it was really close to home. Say that, like 30 minutes. So that was quite nice. And I talked to someone during lunch, and we were talking about subjects they were presenting, and I think it was mostly about, not really cloud related, more server related. Someone how explained how they did a project without using actual computer technology, but they built a game on paper for people to learn how the company works. And I was talking to that person, and yeah, that was it. We were talking about some personal stuff, and then I uh, never saw them again. I thought, and then I was looking into Power Platform, which is then the logo platform on Microsoft, and I thought, well, there's this MVP program for Microsoft. Will there be any MVPs for Power Platform in the Netherlands? And I looked through that list, and lo and behold, that was the person I spoke to during lunch. So I sent him, yeah, connected on LinkedIn, sent him a message, followed his page, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to present on this Power Platform event in Belgium next week." Oh, so it's kind of what do you call it? Serendipity. If you start following people, then those things pop up. It's usually you just randomly roll into it. It's sometimes I try to plan stuff ahead. So I know there's one conference, build stuff in November in Lithuania. I went there 3 times already, and I want to go there this year again. So then beforehand. But usually it's spur of the moment. You see someone post on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the reason I'm asking about this is because as a technologist as you are, one of the things I genuinely see is people get so locked into their particular skill set, and then it's very, very difficult to move into another skill set. And I know that managers also are very, very, you know, loath to look at people who don't have the right levels of skills in a certain area, and sometimes that makes it difficult because that enhances skill shortages, that makes it more difficult for people to have transferable skills. But I kind of understand it because, particularly like in your world, you're looking for a contractor, you need people that have the right types of skills. But I think that what I really like about what you're saying is you're taking on that challenge. You're actually being proactive in leading your career into the areas that technology is going. Um, and part of that is obviously doing these networks, understanding different technologies, and becoming an expert across a variety of fields. And I salute you for that because I see so many technologists, and you probably see CVs of people that are in just one field and they can't kind of move out of it. That's obviously a decision you've made not to do that, I guess, Vita.
Yeah, let's more looking at the tools that are behind the newest tech, because usually they build on stuff that's been done before. Uh, right now, I think I heard of DBT, like a data build tool, 5 years ago. Looked in it briefly, didn't understand it because then it was quite new, and okay, I'll just look at something else. And now it's popping up everywhere. And then if I were to would have had continue with that for the last 4 years, then I would have been an expert in it. But I did work with SQL and how that's using it, and then what problem DBT solves. So you really have to think about. I guess the main point is that you are doing something for customers or end users, and they don't really care what DBT is or how it works. They just care what it does, what problem it fixes. So if you can also look at it from their perspective, that there's this tool that would fix their problem better than another tool, then you implement it. And yeah, usually the problem comes from older technologies or things they are already working with, and then someone builds a new fix for it. So you really have to keep in mind the existing technologies and what problems people could run into, what solutions there could be. And then sometimes you hope and try to think of a new solution, but yeah, usually someone is lost in that, or they have a better solution for it.
And that takes us into kind of what you do, because obviously a platform engineer. is really about building the platform for technologies that a company or an organization will use. And that's obviously the types of projects you've been working on recently. Do you want to just, for our more layperson, non-technical, do you want to just give a kind of an idea of the type of project that you work on, that you've worked in, so that people can kind of understand kind of what happens underneath the applications that they use?
Yes, usually they want data or information from some other source. Could be computers or file hosting, that they want certain files from a location. Could be emails, could be spreadsheets from someone else. I also did a project where we got information from a climate computer for these greenhouses to grow vegetables. Well, that was also ran by a computer, so we got
And
that
this is
data out.
a big thing in Holland, isn't it? Because like
Yeah, yeah, it's
agri
very.
tech um is a huge industry in Holland, isn't it? When you actually kind of look
Yeah,
into it.
I did the project and I never looked into it that much, but they have these whole systems to control the amount of lights, the heating, which windows to open, and they had all these parameters, like a huge amount, and we got them out, and then we sent it to a third party that built a model on their own greenhouse, to calculate how big and how many uh, vegetables you would have of a certain type given those parameters. So if you give it more light, they will get bigger, but it might be ready to sell 1 day later or 1 day earlier. And I guess they were trying to build something that could you would know when to put your stuff to market based on the price of that vegetable at the time. And it was yeah, it was a great system. But the issue was that there was a lot of electricity left over in the Netherlands, or the peak electricity was too high, and then the greenhouses were paid to keep on the lights all the time. So we could go to the model, get this great output of, oh, you need to run your lights for 4 hours this day, but they would turn it on for 12 hours because they would get paid from the energy companies to use up the electricity.
Is this because it's kind of like green energy, so they have to kind of use it, or as it were, because the wind's blowing, you have to use the energy? Or...
Yeah, there's too much energy, so then they get paid to use energy, and that pays more than the vegetables would in like a week or two. So it went all over the place. And we expected them to just follow what we would write to that, but then they just did something else.
And so this is, I mean, going back to our conversation. This is where there's a data variable that you haven't put into the plan, as it were, like something that like I've just done the data based on the data of the vegetables in the greenhouse, but I haven't done the data based on the energy and the cost of the energy. But I guess if they'd asked you to do that, you could have added that in as well, right, Vito?
Yes, eventually, but it wasn't something we thought of, right? Well, because it's such a large scale with electricity usage. But it's always these things you run into that they use it different than what you expect. And then that's also the thing with platform engineering, because you're building a platform. I think the product owner is explaining it really nice now in the team on it. We do a presentation on our demos, and then he says, okay, we're building the toolbox for you, so for the customers to build their own products with. So we have a hammer, we have a screwdriver, and if you need some other tools, then you can ask us, and we can either get them from somewhere, we can buy the software or buy the data, or we can build it ourselves and then have the others use it in their toolbox.
What are the challenges of that? That seems like such a huge project, as it were, and obviously we know there's quite a lot of contractors kind of working on that, as well as kind of permanent employees, like, hundreds of people kind of working on this particular kind of organization. What are the key challenges that you get with these platform migrations for these large corporates? I guess they're always the same as a big company or a small company, but for these like corporate, global, hundreds of thousands of employee type things, what are the main challenges?
Yeah, well, that we come up with one main solution. So now it's for them to use SQL. They are using SQL for about 90% of the data. But some people are also using Python. in notebooks, and they build a small script to do something with the data. And one issue we run into now is that if we allow everyone to use those notebooks and Python, then they can build their own tools, so to say. So they could circumvent our platform, build their own platform in Python, because you can do that in a notebook. And then we will have two systems running. And yeah, if you have a lot of people who knows what they're building, we just provide the tools, right? We don't uh, administrate and look into what they're doing with it. Of course, we have to support it because it's running on our platform. But yeah, they could do whatever they are allowed to with in their roles and permissions. But yeah, that's something to really we have to really be on top of, that they're not going outside of us and building something themselves.
And does that mean, in some ways that you have to set rules? You can do this, you can't do this. So you have to kind of almost police your own platform, as it were. These are the things you can do on the platform, these
Yes,
things you
yeah.
can't.
So we're trying to hide the options, and we can do that with role-based access and say, okay, these users are allowed to do this. But of course, there's always teams that have an exception because they're using something different, or they need to finish something really quick. So some teams do have access, and then you usually get the thing where they will say, oh, but team A does have access. Why don't we get access? And then it's a more political issue instead of a technical issue. And yeah, and once you get people added to it, and no one will stop, and more people will want access, and then you get the whole thing where they can build other systems.
And in a kind of non-technical environment, what you would try to do there is almost have a clear vision for where the company is going, right? We're all trying to do this, working together in order to achieve this. Is there a kind of technology, almost like equivalent of that? Because generally, when you do that in a business, we're all trying to make more profit, we're trying to grow the business. When technology, obviously, people have a different way of looking at it, much like yourself. Yeah, I'm interested in this type of technology, I think this is a better way to do it. I've downloaded this new application, I think this can do it better than this. How do you create that single vision to say, look, this is the most important thing, this is where we're going?
And it's also based on what the market is doing. So, for example, Python, it's popular because it was the largest, yeah, mostly used language. And then it remains popular because it is the most used language, that new people will also start using it because there is more of it. So you could use any technology you would want, but if there's no one using it, then it's really hard for the company to find people that are able to use that technology. So you do have to stay within, I guess, the mainstream technologies that are out there right now. Um, so you do have to take that in mind. You could say, oh, we rewrite it all in the newest language, but if there's no one that has experience with it, and no one outside of technology field is able to use it, then you wouldn't get very far. So that's why it's usually based on SQL, right?
And that's one of the things we've seen. GCS have got this innovation hub where we're training people on new skill sets, but we know that you can't keep changing it, can you? You have to have a basis of it. You have to have a platform that you kind of work from. And I guess then you have to think about new applications coming into the environment, whether they will help, whether they will improve the technology. How do you deal with those? If someone really does come up with this is a really, really important kind of interesting application that I think we can really use. How do you judge that? What's your process?
So I started at this project after they did that. So I think they picked DBT to do that, and then they had few people. You always have these front runners, right? These people that are really interested in getting the new technology first, working on the bleeding edge. So you usually have a small group of people that say, "Oh, I want to try this new technology." Right now, we're trying to do that as well with the whole migration to Azure. So we're trying to get some people that are really enthusiastic about it, and then teach them a bit more than the other users, so that in the end they can teach the other users as well what they have learned. So there's always a small group, and then they work with this smaller group doing tests, and then they can explain to the other users as well how it relates to their field they're working in. Because yeah, I understand data, of course, but I don't understand their data or why it's important to them. While these super users, I guess to say, they do understand both sides. So then they have a better, they can explain it better to them than I could, because I would just only talk about the technology side and not their usual day-to-day work.
And looking at the technologies that you're seeing that are kind of coming into the platform, what are some of the most exciting, interesting things that you're seeing in terms of technology moving forward? You know, what's really kind of catching your attention?
Yeah, right now we're moving to Databricks, and that's been hot for a couple of years. And now a lot of companies are trying to build similar products. It is cloud agnostic, so you could run it on GCP, AWS, and Azure. I guess you could host it yourself. Well, I never tried that. But there are also other companies coming up and seeing that they take a large share of the market because you can do so much with it. You can run SQL, you can do the Python notebooks. There is one single interface, so that if someone works in Databricks at one company and they move to another one that's also using it, they can just start using it again, and they don't have to learn new technologies. So that's getting quite big, and they are, of course, adding on new technologies because it's a platform in itself. They're adding new technologies and new features to it as well, and there's a lot of yeah, a lot of competition right now.
And one of the things that obviously that we've talked about kind of running up to this is we're in March 25, so we're seeing quite a lot of, you know, shifting kind of political um you know, worlds. And one of the things that you mentioned to me before this was thinking about kind of European-based applications. We're both based in Europe. You're based in the EU, if you know what I mean. Um, as potentially different types of technology with this world of tariffs that might be coming in, et cetera, might be less easy to access. You know, obviously, this is very much, you know, pie in the sky. And I think we jokingly said that, you know, things are changing by the day, right? So we don't really know what to trust and what might happen tomorrow. But is that are you seeing that as as something sitting in a European based migration platform project that you're having to assess, to think about, to consider?
Well, right now the migration is for a US company, so I guess they don't have that issue, or they might not have that issue. But it is easy, right? If you have one supplier that's building a platform, well, Microsoft is one of them. They have the operating system, Office, now Azure, the cloud. So it's really easy to add more things that are in their whole platform, and then it's harder to get out if you need to get out, um, because it is in the end a US based company, and there are tariffs are being set on US products and vice versa. So I guess people have to think about what would happen if there's a 25% tariff on maybe tech, or what if they um, shut down access to certain tech, right? And it will be very hard to work if you can't connect to those servers. So then it would be nice to run it on European servers or maybe even local again. So the last 10 years, everyone was shifting to the cloud, and now people are saying, oh, maybe we should do things local again. Um, Yeah, I've been following a couple of projects on that as well. But I guess the main point is that Europe or the EU can't really compete with these hyperscalers in terms of usability, right? They've built so much software, they have so many people working for them, and they build good software because a lot of people use it, and they keep building on this and ease of use. You can click a few things, and the Kubernetes cluster is there. Well, if you would do that inside your organization itself, it would take a lot longer because you have to go through all these questionnaires. Hey, do you really need it? Is it in the budget? So yeah, it's hard. It's easy to get into there, and it's hard to get out again. And that a lot of people are then focusing on these tools, right? So this is now the hot trend in the market. So a lot of new people are learning only cloud technology, but they don't understand the technology behind the cloud technology because most of it is built on open source tools, and in the end, it's always running on a server, right?
Yeah. And I think, obviously people would say, well, that was never going to happen. But then you think about in China, there's many, many tools you can't access. So they've had to build their own tools. And then obviously in our countries, there's many, many Chinese, I guess, or Russian or whatever tools that we can't use, even though they might be quite good. You might think of some Chinese tools, you think actually they're quite good, but you couldn't run a Chinese AI tool, for instance, on a in a US based environment. So that's the sort of thing, as these tariffs go up, as these different kind of technology walls, I guess that's not happening between the US and Europe at the moment. These are things that people might have to start considering. Is there a European based option, because that's the only one I can use.
Yes, that's could be the end result. Yeah.
And that, I guess, then goes back to the basis of this conversation, I guess, Peter, which is from my side, from speaking to yourself, it's really about being aware of what's coming, being 100% aware of this is the path of technology, and as a technologist, linking myself into these different experiences and different trends, as it were. you know and for you, what's most exciting and interesting for you, kind of coming forward, that you're looking at, that you're learning about? I mean, you mentioned there with regards to the kind of no code, with regards to Databricks. These things that you continue to review and to resource and to research.
Is a something that I find personally interesting. I'm not sure if the market is there yet, but well, the computers are getting a lot more powerful. Phones are getting a lot more powerful. I've been using my phone a lot as a computer because it has the hardware for it. And now people are using these AR glasses that you can actually see a 100-inch screen in front of your eyes in the sky, I guess. But you can see it, others can't see it. You can see it through these glasses. Um, and then you can work without a screen. You could work, you could sit in the train while commuting, and you would have a very big screen to work on instead of a small laptop screen. And I went to the conference in November in Lithuania, and then one of the keynote speakers said, "Well,
Just
I
good.
guess that is becoming more and more popular, right? So that you can actually work anywhere. You could sit on the couch, you could sit in a cafe, you could even sit uh,
In the
in the
field.
passenger seat in a car.
Mm.
Yeah, in the field.
I think
You could
I
work
feel like a
anywhere.
car, or maybe a self-driving car. A car itself might be slightly dangerous to be doing coding while
Yeah,
you're
well, not
driving.
driving, but if you're a passenger, right, you can see, and you can also move your head, and it moves the screen with it, so
Sure.
you might get look at a car signal. But the presenter said, okay, but I guess 90% of the people are working in either spreadsheets or documents, but there is no good interface for the AR glasses to work in spreadsheets or documents. So if you could figure out a new way or a better way for people to interact with those things, then you would have a very large market to work with, because that works best on the screen. Like there are things I could do on my phone, but I would pick a desktop with a larger screen over where some things, if I have very large spreadsheet I have to move around in. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's hard to do
that's the
on
ki-
the
that's the
mobile apps.
the killer app to get something. Yeah, because for instance, you're right in saying if you open up a large Excel spreadsheet on your phone, that's not very good. So you need to do that on your desktop. Whereas doing your emails on your phone or your Slack messages or whatever, is quite easy because it's easy to do. So it's about kind of having that application where you're able to do things without kind of going to a laptop, going to a PC. And really that's about space, isn't it? Space in your vision, right?
Yeah, I guess Apple has tried it with the Apple Vision, um, but yeah, either you have uncomfortable hardware or you need the calculations to be done somewhere else. So I guess the AR glasses just project the screen from your device. And now that a lot of devices are getting more and more powerful and a lot smaller, you could carry that around. That's yeah, something I would like to try. And then you get, of course, the next big item you're working with, a keyboard and a mouse. How are you going to replace that with smaller things? and people are trying it with alternatives, but there's not one one item that people say, "Oh, that's really I would like to try," or that's getting very popular.
So it's really about kind of staying ahead of the trends, but also understanding that there's certain universal things, I guess, such as a keyboard that, until someone does it, these are still there. And then as you put the data together, as you put the cloud together, as you lead these types of projects, is understanding that different people will come to this in different ways. And I guess my last question for you is, from your side, as you work on these projects, do you think that people are, improving the way they deliver these projects? That this is that we as a business community or whatever are getting better at this, even in a world which is quite complex. There's political, there's economic, lots of different options. Do you feel that we're becoming better at delivering these types of projects?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. So we are able to deliver more and more complex environments, but a thing I run into is because we're stacking a lot of technologies on top of each other. We're using Azure, we're using Databricks, we're using DBT, and then there's a issue with those three combined. Well, usually I use Google search, right? But how are you gonna combine all that into it? So then that's where the AI chats come in, that you can explain your problem you have, and then it can connect multiple technologies to it. But there are just continuously things being added to that. So the tech stack will become bigger and bigger. And then where is the actual issue? Right? You have to dive to different technologies. And one thing to also keep in mind is that because there are large companies that are very far ahead with all these technologies, they're building data platforms and they're not big enough to need better ones, faster ones, in memory, all these things. But there are also companies that are just um, only using files. They might have SharePoint, they have some files, but they're doing a lot of manual things, which should be automated by just a couple of lines of code or just one workflow built somewhere. And that would help them a lot more than this huge platform that they could buy or could set up. Um, but I guess you would lose track of that if you're only focused on these huge platforms and these huge companies. Like a couple of years ago, you had these Netflix. Oh, we need to build the same architecture as Netflix does. We need the same team architecture as Spotify has. Well, these are just the unicorn large companies, but there are so many smaller ones that you have a lot of benefits from just smaller automation.
Yeah, I guess I kind of think about myself in terms of, the recruitment industry. Obviously, recruitment industry is a lot of people based, sales based, and we do have IT people. But you think to yourself, I was talking to someone the other day, in terms of what you could do with AI and changing the face of recruitment, and how that could work. But I guess there's two things. One is the investment that would need in order to change your business, and secondly, the knowledge that we have. I'm talking about us as a medium-sized business, right? The knowledge that we have to make that huge change as a business itself would be. It seems so scary, right? It seems such a huge thing to do. Obviously, if you did it and did it well, it'd probably give you a huge competitive advantage. But if you did it and did it badly, it would be a huge competitive disadvantage, right? So I guess a lot of median companies sit there and think, I just won't do it. I'll move slowly with the tide of technology, right?
Yeah, it's been working this way before, and this is how it works, and it always worked. So we just continue with this. Yeah, there's also this push to like the data lakes and newer technologies. But then once you're actually in the company and you see what kind of data quality they have or what they do with the data, and they're not ready for all those things, and they can be better helped with just smaller technologies, right? They have their own mainstream they follow, and they could just add one technology or try one thing that could help them out a lot as well.
Brilliant. So my last question then, and I think I'll switch it on you, but this is obviously a live conversation. So for me as a CEO of a medium size reasonably technology focused organization, what would what would your advice to me to be to help me make my business more competitive? Obviously, other CEOs other leaders are listening to this. What should I be doing? What should I be thinking about?
Oh, I would say you would have to check with the people that are working in the company what they might be uh, looking into as well, right? Because it's all individuals that are working on their own smaller problem environments, and then they have ideas for solutions. But if they were to say, "Oh, we want to use technology A," and you are no, we use technology B because it has a nicer logo. I don't know, whatever reason you want to pick.
Generally, for me, it says it
Then
costs less.
yeah, yeah, that could be as well. But then you would get like these issues, right? You get these tensions because people want to do this thing, but we are saying no, should do the other thing, while it's not solving the actual problem yet, right? And sometimes it could also be that there is no problem. It's just people think there is an issue, and that's taking a step back might even solve it instead of just adding new stuff or making uh, workloads bigger, making computers bigger. Yeah. So that's I think it's more a people's thing than there's no one technology that would give a solution for all your problems. Right? There's no silver bullet.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And it's about communicating with people, understanding what they want, and then understanding how technology can help you to achieve those things. So Vito, it's been great to speak to you today. Thank you very much for your time. I think I've learned a lot for the guys of my own business in this. So hopefully I'll be able to kind of put some of this into play, and maybe we might even be able to talk about it ourselves more over the next few weeks and months and years. So thank you, Vito. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
too.